There are moments when the noise around us fades, even as the room remains full. Laughter echoes, glasses clink, words float through the air, yet something within us stays silent. It's in that silence, between sound and self, that loneliness breathes. You felt it before, standing among friends, yet sensing an invisible wall between your heart and theirs. It's a quiet ache, not loud enough to cry out, but heavy enough to linger. The kind of emptiness that doesn't come from being alone, but from being unseen. We live in an age of connection, where messages arrive in seconds, where faces fill our screens, and where the word social has become digital. But beneath the glow of notifications, millions whisper the same unspoken truth: I feel alone. So why do we feel isolated when surrounded by people? Why does the heart retreat even when the body stands among the crowd? Perhaps, loneliness isn't simply about absence, but about presence without meaning. Perhaps it's not about who's around us, but what within us has gone unheard. This is the hidden psychology of loneliness, a story that unfolds not in empty rooms, but in the quiet corners of the human mind. Loneliness did not begin in the digital age. It was born the moment self-awareness awakened in humanity, the moment we realized that inside every mind, there is a private world no one else can fully enter. From the first fires lit in ancient caves to the crowded cities of today, that invisible boundary between souls has never disappeared. In the beginning, our ancestors gathered for survival: tribes, families, communities. Belonging wasn't optional, it was life itself. The warmth of others wasn't emotional comfort, it was protection against the cold night. But as society evolved, as language, culture, and ambition grew, something subtle began to change. The more complex we became, the more we began to drift apart within ourselves. With civilization came the self, and with the self came separation. We learned to wear masks, to speak not what we felt, but what was expected. We learned to perform belonging rather than live it. And somewhere along that path, a quiet fracture opened within the human spirit. Psychologists trace its root to our need for meaning and recognition. To be human is to crave not just company, but understanding, the deep, wordless connection that says, you see me, you know me. As the world grew louder, our voices began to echo unheard. In school, in crowds, in workplaces, in families, we began to trade authenticity for acceptance. We shared smiles but hid our truths. We reached out, yet never fully touched. And beneath all the progress, technology, and achievement, a silent epidemic began to bloom, an epidemic not of isolation, but of disconnection. This was the birth of modern loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone in the dark, but of standing in the light, surrounded by others, and realizing that no one truly sees the storm behind your eyes. As time moved forward, the feeling deepened. The world promised connection, yet delivered illusion. With every new invention, the telephone, the radio, the television, the internet, we built bridges meant to unite us, but somehow, they stretched us further apart. Technology made contact effortless. A tap, a swipe, a like, gestures that mimicked intimacy but lacked its soul. We could reach thousands, yet struggled to reach the one sitting beside us. The glow of screens became our modern campfire, but instead of warmth, they offered a cold light that revealed just how alone we've become. Psychologists began to notice the paradox: people were more connected than ever, but reported higher levels of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Studies showed that scrolling through perfect images and curated lives triggered comparison, envy, and self-doubt. We began to measure our worth not by what we felt, but by how we appeared. And beneath that performance, the smiling selfies, the cheerful status updates, loneliness hid like a shadow. We became experts at masking pain, even from ourselves. When someone asked, "How are you?" the automatic answer came, "I'm fine." But the truth rarely matched the words. The psychology of loneliness is complex, almost cruel. It tricks the mind into silence. It tells you that others won't understand, that reaching out would burden them, that your isolation is yours alone to bear. The brain interprets loneliness as danger, activating the same regions that respond to physical pain. Yet instead of driving us toward people, it makes us withdraw further, as if to protect ourselves from rejection that hasn't even come. And so, the cycle tightens. The more lonely we feel, the more we retreat. The more we retreat, the lonelier we become. It is a quiet spiral, invisible to others, yet powerful enough to reshape the mind itself. Neuroscientists discovered that chronic loneliness alters the brain's perception of the world. It heightens threat responses, makes faces seem less friendly, voices less warm, and words more distant. The lonely mind becomes hypervigilant, scanning every interaction for signs of rejection, often finding them where none exist. In crowded rooms, this effect becomes haunting. Surrounded by people, the lonely brain whispers, "You don't belong here." It's not the crowd that isolates you, it's the invisible wall your mind builds to protect itself. We started to live inside our own echo chambers, both online and within our hearts. The more we tried to connect digitally, the more we drifted emotionally. We forgot what real presence felt like, the weight of a genuine conversation, the comfort of a shared silence, the electricity of being truly seen. And slowly, our world became one where loneliness was no longer an exception, but the norm disguised as connection. Then came the moment when the illusion shattered. The world grew louder, faster, and more connected than ever, yet within that rush, humanity began to feel something breaking. It wasn't sudden. It was quiet, like a slow fracture in glass. A tension that built over years until it could no longer be ignored. For many, the breaking point arrived in stillness, a night after endless scrolling, when the screen dimmed and the silence grew unbearable. For others, it came in the middle of noise, a party, a meeting, a dinner table filled with laughter. Surrounded by people, yet feeling unseen, like a ghost among the living. That realization, that one could be utterly alone while standing in a crowd, became the cruel truth of our age. The crisis of loneliness is not about absence, it is about invisibility. It is the realization that connection without depth feels hollow, that conversations without vulnerability echo like empty rooms. We began to sense that something vital had slipped through our fingers, something ancient, something human. During the global lockdowns, the truth became impossible to escape. When the streets emptied and the world went silent, we were forced to face the one companion we had always avoided, ourselves. Some found peace in that solitude. Others felt consumed by it. The walls of our homes became mirrors, reflecting emotions long buried, the fears, regrets, and longing we had disguised beneath daily routines. It was in that isolation that many discovered the true nature of loneliness. Not as a passing emotion, but as a profound disconnection, from others, from meaning, from the self. It was psychological, biological, and spiritual all at once. Studies showed that loneliness could weaken the immune system, accelerate aging, and alter brain chemistry. But the deeper wound was invisible, the quiet despair of feeling forgotten. And perhaps the most painful part was realizing how loneliness feeds upon itself. The more we ache for closeness, the harder it becomes to reach for it. We fear rejection so deeply that we build walls disguised as independence. We tell ourselves, "I'm fine on my own." But behind those words lies a heart whispering, "Please, see me." This is the fall, not dramatic, not loud, but slow and suffocating. A descent into silence. A point where the human spirit, once built for connection, begins to doubt its own worth. It's the moment when we start believing that maybe, just maybe, we were meant to be alone all along. But after every fall, there comes a quiet moment, a pause where truth begins to rise. In the stillness of loneliness, something unexpected happens, awareness. The mind, stripped of noise and distraction, begins to see what it had long ignored. We start to understand that loneliness is not just an emptiness to escape, but a signal, a message from the deepest part of ourselves. Psychologists describe loneliness as a kind of emotional hunger. Just as the body hungers for food, the soul hungers for connection, for being understood, seen, and accepted. When we ignore that hunger, we starve something essential within us. But when we listen to it, when we allow ourselves to feel it fully, we begin to understand what it truly asks for. Loneliness, at its core, is not our enemy. It's a teacher, one that speaks in silence, one that forces us to confront who we are when the world stops looking. It reveals what kind of connections we seek, and why some of them no longer satisfy us. It asks, what kind of presence do you crave, from others, and from yourself? This realization changes everything. We begin to see that connection doesn't start with reaching out, it begins with reaching in. Before we can be known by others, we must first know ourselves. Before we can be understood, we must be willing to listen to our own truth. Through this awareness, a shift begins. We notice the beauty in genuine moments, a small act of kindness, an honest conversation, a shared silence that asks for nothing in return. We rediscover the human warmth that technology could never replicate. And as that understanding grows, so does compassion, for ourselves and for others. We start to realize that everyone, at some point, feels the same quiet ache. The person beside you, the friend who smiles too easily, the stranger on the train, all of them carry their own invisible loneliness. This awareness doesn't erase the feeling, but it transforms it. The same emptiness that once isolated you becomes the bridge that connects you. The same silence that once haunted you becomes the space where empathy is born. In the end, loneliness reveals its hidden truth, that our longing to connect is not weakness, but proof of our humanity. And that perhaps, we were never as alone as we thought. There comes a moment when loneliness, once feared, transforms into revelation. It ceases to be a wound, and becomes a window. Through it, we see what it truly means to be human. To long, to ache, to reach, these are not signs of emptiness, but of life itself. The pain of loneliness is not proof that something is wrong with us. It's proof that we were made to connect, to share, to be understood. The hidden psychology of loneliness is not merely about absence, but about awareness, the awareness that connection cannot be manufactured, that presence cannot be replicated by screens or words alone. True connection requires risk. It requires the courage to be seen without armor, to speak without pretense, to feel without hiding. Loneliness reminds us that what we crave most is not company, but communion, a meeting of souls, where silence feels safe and words become unnecessary. It is not cured by crowds, but by authenticity. Not by noise, but by truth. And in that understanding, loneliness transforms into a mirror, reflecting not our isolation, but our potential. It shows us that we are not incomplete without others, but that our completeness deepens when we share it. The space between us, once filled with fear, becomes sacred, a bridge for compassion, a passage for meaning. Perhaps that is the greatest paradox of all, loneliness teaches us how to love. It teaches us what connection truly costs, vulnerability, honesty, presence, and why it's worth everything. It strips away illusion until only the essential remains, the quiet, human need to be known and to know in return. And when we finally face that truth, we no longer run from loneliness. We walk through it, and on the other side, we find not just others, but ourselves. In the end, loneliness is not a curse to escape, but a language to understand. It speaks softly, through silence, through longing, through the spaces between words, reminding us of what makes us human. It is both shadow and guide, both ache and awakening. We learn, slowly, that to feel alone is not to be broken. It is to be aware of the depth within us, of the yearning that connects all living hearts. Because beneath the surface of every smile, behind every guarded gaze, someone else is carrying that same quiet ache. And maybe that's the secret, we are never truly alone in our loneliness. Each of us is part of a shared silence that binds humanity together, invisible, yet unbreakable. The more we listen to that silence, the more we recognize it in others. The more we reach, the more we realize that what separates us, also unites us. So next time you stand in a crowded room and feel the weight of that invisible distance, remember, the people around you feel it too. The eyes that pass you might be searching for the same warmth, the same recognition, the same gentle truth. Connection doesn't always begin with words. Sometimes, it begins with presence, a look, a moment, a breath that says, "I see you." And perhaps, loneliness isn't the end of the story at all. Perhaps, it's only the beginning, the first quiet step toward finding our way back to each other.